People love to talk about gut feelings, those quiet alarms that tell you the room is off or the story doesn't add up. And then we wave them away like gnats. Looking back, mine had been blaring for months before the day I was supposed to say, I do. It hissed that my fiancée, Lila, and my best friend, Nolan, were edging past normal familiarity into something else. But I buried that in the avalanche of a brutal job at a software consultancy and the all-consuming theater of a wedding her family demanded. I was exhausted. 12-hour days, endless calls, vendor meetings, and errands, stacked on a guest list long enough to need a map. When I caught them laughing a little too hard in a corner, or saw the way Nolan's gaze lingered on her in a way that made my stomach draw tight, I told myself I didn't have the bandwidth to fight shadows. My parents, loving but modest, Dad a retired teacher, Mom a nurse about to hang up her badge, didn't have the money or the insider savvy to navigate the opulence Lila's mother insisted on. That left me juggling 100 plates without room to breathe. But the warning signs were steady. Their texting spiked into a pattern that didn't fit best man and bride-to-be. I'd catch them grinning at their screens or referring to jokes they wouldn't share. Just memes, they'd say with practiced ease. Inside joke. Nothing you'd care about. Nolan and I had been tight since freshman year. We split a shoebox dorm, crammed for finals until dawn, and covered for each other when life took a swing. I believed, really believed, we were closer than brothers. Maybe that's why I stuffed my doubts under the floorboards. He's my best man, I told myself. He's here to hold the line for me. Right? Lila's family came with glossy pedigree. Her father, Victor Carter, was wired into local politics. Her mother, Elaine, was the kind of fundraiser-dominating socialite who could curdle milk with a smile. When I asked Lila to marry me, they accepted me with polite frost. They never said I wasn't good enough, not out loud. They didn't have to. Every meeting was a reminder that I was marrying up, and their name came with standards. They promised to split costs 50-50, then pushed a venue with a magazine spread of chandeliers, centerpieces that could double as hedges, a quartet, and a list that ballooned to nearly 300 people. My parents cracked open savings they shouldn't have touched. When I tried to rein it in, Elaine would say, "We can't cut corners. We're the Carters." Or, "Do you want your bride to look cheap?" The words scraped raw, but Lila usually sided with them. "Let them have their fun," she'd tell me. "We'll only do this once." Famous last words. A week before go time, Nolan flashed a grin and offered to manage hotel reservations for out-of-towners. "You've got enough going on," he said, waving phone screenshots. "Let me shoulder this." It felt like old times, trusting him with something that mattered, and I thanked him with relief. The night before the wedding, both families gathered at the rehearsal dinner. Lila, wrapped in almost bridal white, floated from cluster to cluster among her father's relatives, who barely glanced at me. My parents stood politely on the edges, out of place amid the luxury. Nolan sent occasional thumbs-ups from across the room. After the run-through, we drifted to a lounge for an after-party. The room was loud with toasts and laughter until a small silence formed around one absence. Lila was gone. Calls went to voicemail. A bridesmaid, trying to sound casual, said she'd stepped out for air because she was overwhelmed. I shrugged. It was the eve of the ceremony. If anyone deserved space, it was her. Time crawled. Then Nolan vanished too. At first, I didn't tighten the net. Maybe he'd gone to fetch champagne, talk to a vendor, anything. But that small, stubborn voice in me said, "Go look." For her. For him. 30 minutes turned into 60. I pulled out my phone and did what everyone does, scrolled. On Lila's Instagram, I caught a glitch, a story that blipped up and vanished in seconds, but it left a trace burned into my memory. A hotel hallway, the gold and cream carpet pattern. Part of a door number, not from our venue. Different corridor. Different hotel. My heart pinched hard. The instinct I'd been smothering roared awake. Go see. I drove through the hotel district with arguments sprinting through my head. Maybe she'd gone to a bridesmaid's room. Maybe Nolan was hauling something for her. What if they're together? No, ridiculous, but the newly awake part of me refused to go quiet. I didn't know which hotels Nolan had booked, but I knew his car. Luck or something meaner parked it near the entrance of a boutique hotel with too much marble in the lobby, if that wasn't a sign. I took the elevator to the 8th floor and started hunting. The numbers ticked up and my pulse pounded with them, each step loud in a corridor that suddenly felt like a stage. I didn't want a scene, not yet. Some sane piece of me insisted on proof. My hand found the door handle of 847, and when I leaned in, there was only muffled silence. I tried the latch. No deadbolt. Months earlier, Nolan had handed me a master key card for emergencies so I could fix guest room snafus without hunting down staff. Just in case something goes sideways, he'd said. I slid it into the slot. A green flash. The soft click of a lock giving up its last duty. They gave me the means to their own undoing. I slipped in. A quiet shadow. Dim light washed the room in honey and shadow. A low murmur, intimate and unguarded. On the bed, Lila's body tangled with Nolan's, skin on skin. Her hair a storm across the pillow. Her voice a half giggle, half whisper. He leaned over her, and whatever he said, it made her laugh. That was enough. Anger surged so fast my hands curled into fists before I could stop them. I wanted to rip him off the mattress, to put him through the wall for daring to do this the night before my wedding. A colder voice cut through. Don't give them a scene. Get proof. The wedding was hours away. Let them stand across from me, believing I was blind. Let me cut the cord in public. I raised my phone, switched to video, zoomed, and pressed record. Lila's face. Nolan's profile. The clock in the background. The date-time stamp clean in the corner. They had no idea I was there. He whispered, "We'll never get caught." And Lila's soft laugh followed. The mic caught it. Perfect. My body shook with rage I could barely dam, so I repeated a mantra through clenched teeth. Not now. Not here. When I had enough, I eased backward and filmed my own exit so there'd be no question later about where and when. The door clicked shut behind me. I walked fast until I hit the elevator, then nearly ran for the street, lungs burning. Outside, the night slapped me cold. My heart hammered like I'd sprinted 10 blocks. The phone felt hot in my hand, digital proof that the two people who should have had my back had slid a knife into it. I drove until neon lights gave way to a flickering 24-hour diner sign. In a cracked vinyl booth, I watched the clip alone. There was no doubt left. That's where the outline of a ruthless plan took shape. They'd humiliated me. I wouldn't be alone in that. I didn't sleep. By 5 a.m., 3 coffees down, I had a notebook full of cues and a mental script for hijacking the run of show to get the mic and the projector. The venue's AV setup was serious, good enough for childhood slideshows and beach snapshots. Everything I'd curated could be swapped in a heartbeat for something else. A phone, a thumb drive, any feed I wanted. I hesitated a second, haunted by the idea of forcing an intimate clip on a ballroom. Then I remembered the hotel room, the timing, the smirk. Actions meet consequences. At 6:30, I went back to the apartment Lila and I had shared for almost a year. She wasn't there. If she thought I was oblivious, maybe she'd try to sneak in and stage a girls' night alibi. The rooms were undisturbed. The neat bed, her charger curled on the nightstand, the ring box I'd given her glinting on the dresser. My chest burned with fresh heartbreak and older anger. She'd thrown away everything for a quick, dirty thrill with my best friend. I set my phone to vibrate and tried to close my eyes for an hour. Around 9, the door beeped. I stayed still. Soft steps, like she didn't want to wake me and invite questions. She went straight to the guest room to fix the damage in the mirror. Half an hour later, I walked out, stretching like I'd slept well. She sat at the island with brushed hair and makeup muted, in a t-shirt and sweats, and gave a worn smile. "Morning, babe," she said. "Crashed with a friend. Too much wine at the rehearsal? You know, Must have been some party, I said, calm, and kissed her cheek. Glad you're okay. Her eyes flickered. Relief. Caution. She was reading me, trying to measure what I knew. Good. Think you got away with it. I only needed a few more hours. The Ashford country estate, chosen for prestige more than love, was set for a noon ceremony. My parents arrived at 10, excited and oblivious to the fault line under our feet. I hugged them hollowly. Mom beamed in pastels. Dad clapped my shoulder like he was steadying a younger version of me. I've got last-minute AV stuff, I said, forcing a smile. See you soon. Lila and her bridesmaid spun in their suite, all hair and makeup and pins. Nolan was likely with the groomsmen, but I had zero interest in seeing him. Let him think I was still in the dark. In the AV booth above the ballroom, Marco, the tech, tested the mics and projector. This is the groom Aaron, he told a coworker. He's got extra media. Yeah, I said with an easy grin, slipping a flash drive from my jacket. Going off script. More. Dramatic than the usual slideshow. Marco chuckled. Your day, man. Give me the cue. I'll say, roll it, I said. You won't miss it. A thin wire of guilt tugged at me. I cut it. They set the terms. At 11:50, the grand room, high ceilings, crystal lighting, chairs in perfect rows, was nearly full. Lila's side dominated. The Carter's orbit. Local names with business cards that opened doors, and cousins I'd never met. My side was smaller friends, co-workers, family. Half swallowed by their crowd. By tradition, I should have been at the front with the efficient. At 11:55, the efficient was missing, and worry rippled. Victor checked his watch and scowled. My mother wrung her hands. Elaine whispered to a friend, "Where is Aaron? Is he always this unreliable?" She loved any reason to look down. Lila, hidden in the back, must have been unraveling. I watched from behind a balcony curtain, counting the heartbeat of the room. At 12:01, when the processional should have started, confusion simmered. Perfect. I slipped into the booth. Marco hovered over the board. We're behind a couple minutes. You good? Perfectly, I said, flipping on the mic that fed the room. My heart slammed against my ribs. Rage and adrenaline did the rest. Good afternoon, I said, and a hush fell across the seats as heads turned, searching. I wasn't at the altar. I was nowhere they could see easily. The murmur climbed into a question. Where's the officiant? Someone asked. Actually, I said, letting the word echo, there won't be a ceremony. Gasps spread like brush fire. Some stood to look for me. Others craned toward the sound booth. Lila, somewhere out of sight, had to be unraveling. I nodded to Marco. He loaded my drive and waited for the line. Before anyone gets too upset, I said, voice cool. I have something to show you. A short video. Marco, roll it. The screen at the front, on a loop of sweet photos of Lila and me, blinked black. Then, grainy, unmistakable footage filled it. The hotel bed, the two people on it, the room clock behind them, the date and time stamp in the corner. Last night. I'd tightened the crop just enough that Nolan's face turned toward the lens, never seeing me. Shocked cries snapped through the rows. Silence sucked the sound out, then an uproar of whispers and hands over mouths. An aunt shrieked. Victor wobbled on his feet. Elaine's face collapsed into a mask of acid. Down the hall, Nolan might have heard the sound of his life detonating. A bridesmaid wailed. Someone yelled, "Turn it off!" I let it loop for 10 long seconds, enough for anyone breathing to read the clock, the stamp, the bodies. Then I cut the feed. The room didn't calm. The noise sharpened. Marco looked like he might be sick. At the doors, Lila appeared in full gown hair immaculate, makeup a triumph, and nothing on her face could cover panic. "Turn it off!" she screamed. Too late, voice climbing into a raw edge. Elaine surged toward the projector, stabbing at staff with a finger. "Who allowed this?" she demanded. Victor barreled down the aisle. A bull shakes his head like that. "Aaron! Where is Aaron?" Guests scooted out of his path. Some filmed, some fled. My mother sobbed. My father stood beside her, square-shouldered against the Carter's storm. Someone fainted in the second row. It was bedlam. Lila's eyes scanned the room until she caught me on the second-floor rail. I stepped into view. Everyone followed her gaze like a flock. "What are you doing?" she shrieked, voice shredding. "You're not supposed to see me before the wedding, you coward." Under the circumstances, the superstition would have been funny if it hadn't been so pathetic. "There is no wedding," I said, letting every word carry. "You made sure of that last night." She froze. Tears brightened her eyes. "Aaron, please, let's talk." "Not here." "Why not?" I asked. "You didn't mind doing it to me with my best man. People traveled and spent money to be here. They deserve to know why this is over." Elaine, red and shaking, jabbed a finger at me. "You've humiliated the Carter name in front of important people. Do you understand what you've done to us?" I laughed once, a bitter bark. "Humiliation? Lila and Nolan humiliated me. This is honesty." Nolan stumbled into the aisle in a half-buttoned tux, hair wrecked, eyes blown wide. "Man, let's talk," he said, hands up. I took the stairs 2 at a time and met him in the aisle. Lila rushed to wedge herself between us. The layers of her dress got in the way. I pushed past Toole. My hands ached from clenching, and the video played fresh in my head. "Dude, you're taking it out of context," Nolan stammered. "She was upset. I didn't let him finish. I slapped him, palm cracking loud in the sudden quiet. He reeled and went down with a groan. The room gasped. Lila screamed, "Stop! You're hurting him!" and dropped to her knees, dress bunched. Elaine choked on rage. "Monster! Attacking him in public!" "That," I said, pointing at him as he tried to stand, "is the monster, along with your daughter. They made me a fool in my own house. Now everyone knows what they are." Silence fell like a curtain. Lila looked up at me, tears streaking. "I'm sorry," she said. Small. "Please stop." I faced the crowd, many phones held up like mirrors. "Thank you all for coming," I said with an exaggerated formality. "There will be no ceremony today. Consider this the truth instead." I walked out, pushing the heavy doors. My parents followed, stunned, but with a kind of grim resolve. Lila screamed my name down the hall. I didn't turn around. Back at the apartment, adrenaline still buzzing, my mother asked in a small voice, "Was that real?" I showed her the original clip with the clean timestamp. Her expression broke. "Oh God," she whispered and hugged me. "I'm so sorry." Dad stood behind her, searching for words. "You did what you had to," he said finally. "I'd rather lose money than watch you live a lie." He was right, and I still felt crushed by guilt that they'd had to stand in that blast because they'd sacrificed to make that day possible. But a quiet cancellation wouldn't have given me closure. Sunset found me packing. Every piece of Lila's life in my space went into boxes. Clothes, a ridiculous shoe collection, trays of makeup, the little knickknacks she said a home needed. I labeled everything in marker and rented a small trailer online. Near midnight, I backed up to the Carter's stone portico and stacked the boxes neatly by the door. The gate guard recognized me and waved me through. I hit the brass knocker once. Lights flicked on inside. Let them open the door and find their princess's things. She could move back into her old room for all I cared. Morning came with pounding on my door. Victor's voice thundered through it. "Open up!" I pulled on a t-shirt and found Lila, Victor, and Elaine in the hall. Fury, posture, and expensive anger. Lila's eyes were swollen. Her hair was a mess. Victor looked like he'd come straight from a boardroom fight. Elaine clutched a stack of papers like a weapon. "We need to discuss compensation," Victor said, voice cold. I almost laughed. "For what?" Elaine thrust the papers forward. "For that spectacle," she snapped. "Tens of thousands on a wasted event, lodging, catering, bookings. Your stunt destroyed it. You owe us." I skimmed the itemized gall. "You realize your daughter slept with Nolan the night before our wedding, right?" I said. "That's the ruin." Lila's face twisted. You had no right to ambush me in front of everyone. You could have canceled quietly. I had every right, I said, heat rising again. You and Nolan humiliated me. I returned the favor. Actions. Meet consequences. Victor's voice climbed. We paid half. Your parents paid half. Costs went far beyond that. We want $15,000. That's a fraction of the damage. You think I owe you 15 grand for a ceremony your daughter detonated? I said, disbelief making the words taste metallic. Elaine's mouth curled. You projected filth in front of donors and officials. You damaged our reputation. You don't walk away without making some of it right. I almost smiled at the audacity. None of this happens if Lila kept her vows a day early, I said. Lila flinched. Maybe if you'd been around more. If you cared about my needs. I laughed once. So it's my fault now. No, get out. I'm not paying you a cent. Victor stepped in, using height like a threat. Do you know who you're picking a fight with? I have influence in this town. And I have the raw recording with your daughter's face and a timestamp, I said. Throw your weight around if you want. I'll let the public replay what happened. Victor seethed and stalled. Lila tried a softer line, stepping closer. Aaron, please. We loved each other. Don't destroy everything over one mistake. One mistake, I said, voice shaking on the edge of a laugh. You chose it. I saw it. It's over. Leave. Victor's shoulders sagged when he realized he had no leverage. Elaine sniffed. You'll regret this. Not as much as I would have regretted marrying your daughter, I said. They slammed the door hard enough to rattle the frame. I leaned against it and let the exhaustion wash through me with something that felt like relief. No wedding, no fiancé, no best friend. Hollow victory, but still a victory. Words sprinted. Some people called me brutal. Others called me legend. I didn't answer critics. Nolan texted once. Dude, I'm sorry. You gotta understand. I didn't reply. He lost his job shortly after over honesty issues. Seemed fitting. My parents were torn heart sore over the money, relieved I'd dodged a life sentence in a lie. Better to lose dollars than your dignity, Dad told Mom. I promised to pay them back. The Carters tried to spin at jealous groom, wild tantrum, but too many people had seen the truth 10 feet tall. Their name went dull. Lila bounced between couches and damage control. Maybe she ended up with Nolan. I didn't care. I moved to a smaller place, drowned myself in work for a while, and slowly rebuilt my life. The anger kept me moving until it didn't. Eventually, the scandal dimmed. I kept the clip, in case the story ever needed proof again.